Hey guys, in part 3 of our advanced head turning series, we take a look at how to turn the head with point placement and smart bones. The time has come. We are now on part 3 of the advanced head turning series for Anime Studio. Now, if you missed parts 1 or 2, you can check those out by clicking on the annotations on screen. Those parts covered how to create eye and mouth movements, which we'll be incorporating into the head turn at the very end. For this particular video, it's going to be longer than the first two, and that's because a lot of time has to go into molding the face, getting the perspective right, correcting the movement, and so on. So bear with us, you'll need some patience for this, but if you follow along, I assure you that you'll pick up on the basics and be able to create your own head turn that's a bit more advanced than the one we did a few weeks ago. So with that said, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we'll need to do for the head turn is create a head turn action in our actions panel. So go to New Action, and we'll name this one HT. That stands for head turn, but not only that, that's the name of the bone we made for the head turn action. Now we are inside the head turn action. We can move the dial with our rotate bones tool to the left. Now for this tutorial, we will only be rotating the head to the left. We could do to the right too, but we want to keep things as concise as possible. And you can very easily apply what we'll be showing you to either side of the face. You can have it turn left and right, even up and down, whatever you want. But hopefully these steps will give you a good starting point with just going to the left. So the next step, we'll need to figure out how much space we need for this head turn. Now, in the past, whenever we did smart bone dials with our tutorials, we usually only went to frame 1 and we just performed the change, and then we just used the dial to interpolate, where we're going with it. But we're going to want to go to about frame 48 with this, because we will need all that space in between to make corrections, whether it's with the face, the perspective, and so on. Anime Studio is a great program, but sometimes it needs help. And with those frames in between 1 and 48, we'll be able to help it along by placing manual corrections. So again, you'll want to make sure that once you go into your action, it automatically places keyframes on frame 1. You'll just want to help those along and bring them all the way up to frame 48 by highlighting them with your mouse and then just dragging them up to 48. And then from there, we can resume. So we'll first start with the mouth. Just kind of something basic here. So we'll grab the mouth group layer. We'll take our select layer tool and make sure you are on frame 48 and your dial is to the left. You can see it kind of move there because we had to do a correction. But we're just going to go through eyes and mouth here and nose, and we're just going to move everything to the left. Now, the facial details will need to come along as well. And remember, we have a mask going on here. So the mouth and the eyes and the eyebrows and all that on the outside of the face will not be seen. They will be hidden. And so we don't have to worry about that. Now, if we go back and forth between 1 and 48 within this action, you can see things are looking pretty good. We have the movement going how we want it to go. And so far, so good. But we will need to go in here and obviously do some corrections. So let's start with the nose. It's as good a place to start as any, and we'll be bouncing back and forth here. But we'll take the Translate Points tool, and what we're going to do is come in here and we're going to sculpt the nose so that it looks like it's a side positioning, so that we're looking at it from the side. Now, you could spend a lot of time on this, and there's many types of noses you can create. So it's kind of hard to say, exactly how to go about this, but we're going to do our best here. With a tutorial like this, it's more on the fly than anything, because you're kind of just molding it as you go along. So you can see it's looking pretty good. It kind of does the shift as we go back and forth here, so that is a good sign. And you can go in a little bit more and do even more corrections if you want, if you feel that it is required. Again, it will depend just on how your nose looks. You might have a really cartoony big nose, that sticks out, so you'll just have to kind of play with that perspective. Now, we can go in here with the head, and we can start adjusting the head. We can also hide the hair just for now for us to see what's going on here. And we can come in here and start sculpting out the forehead and kind of where the eyebrow is. And just coming in here and connecting the face to the nose. That's an important one. And just overall trying to start molding this to how we feel it needs to go. Now, of course, there are many ways we could approach this in terms of points. You can see Jim has a lot of points here. Now, when we get to the mouth, you'll want to kind of bring the face inward so that it kind of hugs the teeth of the mouth, if you have an open mouth, that is. And try to do it as best as you can. You could probably have a few more points there if you wanted, just to make it a little bit more detailed. But for now, it will work. And if we come in here to the mouth layer, we can also take that tongue and move it back as well, just to kind of play with this a little bit more so that it looks correct, because the tongue's going to come from the back, outward. So in this case, you can see the tongue moves a little bit when we do the rotation, but I think we're good to go there. So we can continue on then with sculpting the face. Now, we'll need to come down here kind of with the chin area and try to bring that out a bit and just kind of come in here and adjust some points. I'll just say it again. It will depend on your character designs. For instance, Jim's character designs are different than mine. And so mine would be a bit different, a bit more simplistic. So I probably wouldn't have to do as much with this as he would have to. But since his mimic more of a real person, then you have to kind of go in and get all those little details corrected. So what we're doing now is we're just kind of bringing these points up once we get past the chin here. And you'll probably discover as we continue to do this, he's going to come through this a few more times and continue to clean things up. It's just the nature of it. It really is. Sometimes it's difficult to get things right off the bat. It sometimes takes hours of patience just to mold these things and get them right. And Jim mentioned too that he doesn't see Anime Studio so much as a drawing program as it is a sculpting program, which I would have to tend to agree, because as you move these points, once you have them down, it's really all a matter of sculpting. So as you can see, we're kind of going back and forth here, and we're starting to get an animation here that looks kind of convincing. And the next part, we're on the bone layer, and we're going to enable animated layer order in the depth sorting tab. What this will do is it will allow us to take that ear that's on the right side and at one point, at any point we want, bring the ear so that it's above the head. Because as the head turns, we're going to want that ear to come onto the front, basically. But for right now, we're going to move that left ear back as the head turns. So on frame 48, we just move that ear to the back of the head so that we can see it kind of disappears like that. So that looks pretty good. And what we can do now is come over here to about, let's say, let's go about 24. And we'll take that first ear, the ear on the right, and move it up past the head. Now remember, we have that animated layer order on, so it will start behind on frame 1, and then on frame 24, it will go up. Also on frame 48, we'll move it more towards the center of the head, and we can also expand it outwards with the scale points tool just to widen it a little bit. Now, you'll see here, when we come back, it swaps positions. It goes from back to front, and that's what you want. Now, right now it looks a little bit, I would say, choppy in terms of how it switches. And you can adjust just where it switches. And in order to do that, you need to be on your bone layer. And you can see that we have a channel for it at the bottom here. And he's adjusting the keyframe for it now. But you also have to keep in mind, too, that most head turns that you'll be doing are probably going to be pretty fast. And they're not going to be really slow and deliberate. And so these little, like, hiccups, where the ear goes from back to front probably won't be as visible if you do a faster head turn. So he's continuing here to just alter the ear just to kind of get it to where he wants it. And again, trial and error, a lot of playing around here going on. And let's see here. We might want to adjust kind of how that ear pops again, so we can just move that keyframe back a little bit. That's looking a little bit better, I think. A little bit more seamless. So again, it's kind of a judgment call, because either way, it's not going to look 100% when you're doing it really slow. But again, when it goes faster, it's better. So what we can do now is we can find the spot where that ear comes onto the face in front and go to that ear layer and zoom in, and then take the line width tool, and we're just going to go from the point where it's on the face and just kind of taper it out. So basically that taper effect will also tween in from the back to the front. And you can see in its final stage, that line looks like it's disappearing in the center of the ear. So, and it then makes it look like it's part of the face, essentially. So we can also do that too then for the nose if we wanted to, because as you can see, there's kind of a strong line going, up from the nose, kind of intersecting with the eye. So we can select the nose, we can take that line width tool, and we can just kind of taper things out like that. So it'll look a little bit better when we are looking at it here. We can also just do a little bit more sculpting here just to try to get things right. The curvature tool also helps in this regard, and we can just kind of go from there. So when we look at this now, you'll see that there's this kind of this line. It looks like it's almost like a piece on the nose. Don't worry about that. That will be gone when we render this out. We can also shrink the eye at this point, and we can bring the facial details in a little bit as well, just to kind of give it a little bit more perspective. And we can just kind of bring things in. So again, a lot of this we'll have to do just kind of with eyeballing it in some regard as well. So we can turn the head. We can see, what's going on here. It's starting to come into reality. The head turn is starting to work. We can work on the head a little bit more here, though. We kind of have that lump going on in the back. So we'll just select some points, and we can bring things out a bit, and we can kind of try to go in and correct that little lump in the back here. So come in here with our Translate Points tool and just shrink some things in, get everything working how it should, or looking how it should at least. Kind of come up like so. And again, this will depend on your character design as well. Some characters are going to be more exaggerated in certain areas than others, so there will be different shapes going on. And you might not need as many points as we have here as well for the head. You could probably reduce those points, but we'll work with what we got, and we will keep trucking along because we're incredible. We are incredible tutorials. So we'll bring this in a little bit. The jawline should be, kind of not back by the ear, but kind of more below it. So that's what's going on right now. He's bringing those points in so it kind of matches the ear, or the jawline is, and it's kind of coming in and shaping it up. It's always kind of hard to do a tutorial on something like this because it always takes so long to do some of these things, and it's not so much about practicing ahead of time as it is, you just have to keep playing with this stuff and molding it. But we are getting there. So you can see now things are starting to look a little bit better with this. The head is coming, I would say, more into formation as to how it should look. We can come in here and we can do a little bit more with the nose, maybe just bring it out a little bit. Of course, if you bring it out, you have to then adjust some points for it. So we can just kind of bring those in like so. Make sure it kind of matches the line width as much as possible with the head. Kind of like that. Kind of bring things in like so. Things are looking pretty good with that. And again, that line I mentioned before, don't worry about that. That will be gone when you render it, as you can see. It's not there. It's just kind of a reference point, I guess, as to where things connected on your workspace. So what we have to do now, kind of just correct some things here, is we need to continue on with just kind of sculpting here. And it's all a matter of just looking to see what needs work next. So if we do the turn here, you can notice that the perspective isn't quite right, halfway in between already. The eye positioning is wrong. And that's why we do up to frame 48, just to get things so that we can correct them. So we're going to bring that eye in a little bit. We'll squish it slightly, and we'll bring it in like so, because it was too far out when we did the initial tween. That also means that we need to bring the eye details in as well. So we can just select those eye details and kind of bring them in and squish it, nudge it a little bit like that. And you can do some minor adjusting if you feel it's needed. And we'll also need to bring the eyebrow just over slightly as well to match up with that eye. So that looks a little bit better. Now, as we come out, we might want to also bring these things in as well, because they're a little bit too far out. So we can just bring that eye in like that. Looks a little bit better. And let's see here. We'll also need the eyeball, of course, the eye itself. So we can just bring that over so it looks like he's looking a little bit forward when he does it. And then we kind of have it go out like so. Now, we could probably do some other corrections here as well. Bring the eye in as well as the white of the eye here. So kind of in like so. And again, that mask will cut the whites of the eyes off at that certain point, so we don't have to worry about it sticking out like how it looks right now. Remember, the mask within the mask kind of creates some different looks with that. We know, though, that that mask will be covering past the face. And again, when you're doing this stuff, you just bring your eye details in, get things corrected and cleaned up. And then we can kind of take a look here and see how it's looking. And it's looking better. And I know it's kind of hard to tell because when you have that eye kind of sticking out and stuff, it is hard to tell, even though when you render it, it won't be doing that. But even at frame 42, we could bring the eye in a little bit as well, of course, as the white of the eye like that. Just make sure it doesn't go past the nose. And you can go in and clean up the details if you want, if you feel it's needed. So that right there is a great example as to why we need those frames, so many frames in between. It's always good to have that extra room to help correct. So now you can see with the face we have some distortion kind of going on right about here. So what we can do is you could try to copy and paste from frame 0 over there, but sometimes it's best just to manually correct. So we'll come in here and we'll just take these points and kind of get them so that they look a little bit more natural. And we can also do the same here on the bottom, just to make sure that nothing funky is going on with the points. Okay, so far so good. And at a certain point here, we'll probably want to start complementing the mouth You can kind of see the mouth is starting to come into play right there. So we can kind of come in and move our points, because eventually the points do lock to the mouth. But we can kind of come in here and start to, again, complement and accommodate for that part, just like that. And again, that gray or brown area you are seeing won't actually be seen in the render. That's just part of the mask. But it's looking pretty good. We can use a little bit of the curvature tool here to kind of just get things to pop a little bit more. Come in here, maybe straighten those edges a little bit with that mouth on frame 48. Things are looking pretty good. We also need to use that line right there. We need to correct that line. You can see it's kind of like not following the mouth. So at frame 24, we can move that line back a little bit, and we can do some corrections then with our points. Kind of go over here to frame 31 and move that up a little bit. Again, a little bit more. Just correcting. Come in here and move that back at frame 48. So you can see that looks a little bit more convincing when it comes to turning the head. And that's all it's about, is creating this convincing movement. So now we can bring the lip down just a little bit, just to kind of give it a little bit more. And let's see here. Move that out a little bit. Again, it's all about molding, and it's all about patience. Patience is key when you do this kind of stuff, or else you'll drive yourself insane. So, okay, you're looking pretty good here now with the head turn, if you've gotten to this point. But there's something we have to tackle, and it's the hair. And this is probably one of the harder parts. So first thing with the hair is, if you want, you can turn on, making sure that you're on the hair layer, you can turn on onion skins. So, and for the first frame that is, so that when you start molding the hair at frame 48, you have a reference point as to just how the hair pieces look and kind of where their lines are. It really does kind of help when you start messing with this stuff, and it gives you a good reference point. And we'll have to do some in-between work as well, but start at frame 48, and we're just going to come down here, and we're going to try to create this hairline. And you can see we could actually have more points if we wanted to. If you wanted much more detail, you can have less. That's kind of really I would say it's more of a personal preference when it comes to creating in Anime Studio. But we're just going to come in here, we're going to match the hair, with the head, and kind of just give him a little bit of a sideburn here. And what we'll need to do now is, as you can see, we turn here, that part's matching pretty good, but of course we have a ways to go when it comes to how this looks. So let's take a look here. Okay. Come back here to the hair. Yeah, let's move the hair below the ear at frame 13. Because we're doing the same thing we did with the ear itself. When we move the hair beyond that point, you can see now that the ear is going to be above it, which is going to work for us. So with that said, we can go back to frame 48 and continue on here. And you should already have your layer ordering animated out, because you adjusted that on your bone layer. So by moving the hair, you don't have to do anything. It will automatically just move when you get to frame 13. So coming in here, we're just going to try to match the top of the hair here as best as possible. Again, we're using the onion skin as a bit of a reference here for just how things look. Now for this piece we have going on here near the eyebrow, we're just going to have to bring all these points up to kind of just hide it a little bit, hide the fact that we have all these points, and just create a strand of hair. So we'll match here the hair to the forehead as close as possible, and then we can come in with these points and just kind of move everything up, just like that. Get things up like so. So that's looking pretty good. We can do a little bit more adjusting here if needed, just to make sure, it's not overlapping the forehead or anything to a point where it looks weird. Just make sure it looks like it's kind of laying on the side like that. Okay. So we can kind of see this head turn coming into effect here. So it's looking pretty good. The one thing we will need to correct is the right side where the hair is interpolating. You can see that the hairline isn't quite matching up with the onion skin. So we'll go to frame 24 and we'll just kind of move these points so that it sort of matches what you're seeing on the onion skin outline. Just kind of come in here like that. Kind of have that little wave and dip. We'll try to get that in there. And that's looking better. And we can also adjust the hair that's near the top of the head then as well, just to kind of compensate for that. I would say that's looking better. Come in here and do just a few more adjustments. You can see that we accidentally did that in frame 23. If that ever happens, you can simply drag your corrections onto frame 24 or wherever it is that you were doing that. So I would say so far so good. Things are looking good. Again, just a little bit more molding. Bring it up like so. And maybe try something like that. And that's looking, again, you can already tell that's looking better. It's not moving as much, as it was before. There's much more, I would say, definition in terms of where that edge is for the hair. Keep going like so. Okay, let's try it again. You can see it's looking better. So right now, if we move this, you can see that on the left side, we have a strand of hair that looks like it's kind of floating a little bit, or it's kind of hugging a little bit. And what we can do, again, is just go in and it's right there, kind of right past the eyebrow. What we can do is just go in and just correct that slightly. Just kind of like that. Bring it in like so. And that's looking a little bit better. Maybe bring this in so it doesn't look like it's kind of floating, more like it's hugging the side of the head. Try that. Yep, and that's looking better. It's not looking like it's floating. It looks like it's, meshing and going along with the turn. Okay, so I would say so far so good. So you're getting there. You're almost there. We render this out, we can see that's what the side of the head looks like. So what we can do now, go to our main line, go to our bone layer. Let's go to about frame 6. So what we can do first is actually put the head turn in. We'll go to about frame 18 and turn the dial. And we have the head turn. Just like that. That's what the dial is there for. And you can even bring it in further and you can kind of see how this is going to look. And we'll have the final preview here for you to see how it looks. And you've probably seen that at the beginning of the video as well. But for the eye movements, we can now go into frame 4, create a keyframe, go to frame 7 and close the eyes, then go back to frame 10 and hit reset. So he'll blink before he turns his head. But we could go a step further. Create a keyframe at frame 19, and then have his eyes close at 22, and then have them pop back open at frame 25. So he blinks, and then he blinks when he looks over. And that's a good thing to do too. Whenever someone turns, they kind of do a blink. It's kind of a good, nice little transition. And you can do the same for the mouth as well then. It just helps to do this kind of stuff. So he's smiling, and then he closes his mouth, then he looks over, and then perhaps then you could put a keyframe in, and then you could reset the movement, or you can just adjust it so it's a little bit open, and then you could have him open his mouth just like that. So again, those first 2 tutorials now served a purpose. Now, for the actual animation of the mouth, we don't have any movement really going on for the head, I would say, is in terms of like how things are moving. It's not quite right, and what you'd probably want to do is once you transition from one to the other, from the front view to the side view, you'd probably want to then have another character that's side view ready, rigged up and ready to go with the mouth lip syncing and all that, just so that you are set there. And you can also do a few more things here as well if you wanted to in terms of movement. We don't have a bone for this, but we could take the transform layer tool and just set some keyframes down. And then, for instance, when he turns his head, let's say right about here, you can rotate it down like so. Even move it down a little bit. So, and then when he's looking to the side completely, you could then just reset those points if you wanted to, just like so. And then when you animate this out, then that's when you have that motion going into play when he kind of looks like that. So that looks pretty good. But anyway, that concludes this tutorial. I know it was a bit long, and I probably ran out of things to say halfway through, but that's all part of the process. When you create something like this, something a bit more detailed, it's going to take more time. So hopefully you found this to be of value. If you'd like more tutorials, please subscribe. We are releasing tutorials weekly. We also have a website, incredibletutorials.com, and we are also on Facebook, Google+, and Twitter. Thanks for watching, guys, and we will see you next time.